There's a way to get warmer leads than anything that Sales Navigator can give you, without scraping thousands of cold profiles or sending a single massive invite. Here's what trips people up. Everybody treats Sales Navigator like it's the finish line. You build a filter, you export a list, you blast it, and then you wonder why replies are flat. The list isn't a problem, the timing is. Let me show you a better way to find people who are actually ready to hear from you today. Hi, my name is Cynthia. I built an AI platform that does LinkedIn outbound with email. You can run it yourself or white label it under your own brand. This is the exact approach I use every day, and let's get into it. Here's the counterintuitive part. A Sales Navigator list is just a snapshot of people who fits your ICP. The right title, the right company size, the right industry, the right country. That tells you someone could be a buyer someday, but that day probably is not today. Think about it from their side. A VP of sales who perfectly on profile but totally happy with their current setup. That's cold. But still that same VP, but the week they lost their 2 sales rep and their pipeline just broke, that's warm. Same person, same title, completely different moment. And that's the difference of adding the buying signal layer. A buying signal is essentially any public action that tells you something just changed in that person's world. Let me give you the 4 that I'll start with. First signal is hiring. A company posts 3 SDR roles this month. They're scaling outbound and they're feeling their pain right now. That is a signal. 2, funding. A startup just raised a Series A, Series B. They've just got new budget and pressure to grow fast. Perfect timing to show up. 3, job changes. Someone just stepped into a new head of growth role. In their first 90 days, they're actively looking for tools and partners to prove themselves. Reach out in week 1, not year 2. 4, and this is my personal favorite, engagement signals. Someone comment on a competitor's post or engage with an influencer in your space talking about the exact problem that you solve. That person just raised their hand in public. They're thinking about this problem today. Maybe you already noticed that none of these 4 signals are in Sales Navigator filter. So you can't filter for just got frustration, but you can watch for it. Now there's a catch. Signals are everywhere, but they're scattered and they're time sensitive. A hiring post from 3 months ago is useless. Nobody has the hours to manually refresh competitor posts and funding feeds all day, so people give up and go back to blasting cold lists. This is the part you want to automate. The system monitors those sources around the clock. It watches who's commenting on your competitors and your chosen influencers' posts, and it tracks hiring and role changes across target accounts. The moment someone triggers a signal, it pulls that person straight into our pipeline automatically. You wake up to a list of people who did something meaningful yesterday, not a static export from 6 months ago. If you're an agency, this is a service you can run for every client on autopilot and put your own name on it. Nav runs inside Claude Code through MCP, so you just tell Claude in plain English to point the signal agents at a few competitors and influencers, and it runs them and hands you back a warm in-market list. But catching the signal is only half of it. This is where a lot of outbound still dies. The opener has to name the thing that just happened. If they commented on a competitor's post about a broken cold email, your first line should be like this. Saw your comment on that thread about deliverability, curious what you've tried so far. If they just raised funding, you can say, congrats on the raise. Usually right after this is when the outbound suddenly needs to scale. That's not a template. So the AI writes each opener off the specific signal that pulled them in, because every trigger is different. It reads like you are personally watching what they did. That's what earns the reply. So quick recap. Sales Navigator gives you fit, who could buy. Signals give you timing, who's ready right now. If you run an agency, this is something you can white label and run for a client. You keep the relationship and the credit, and the system does the watching and the writing. If you're a small team, it's the fastest way to punch above your headcount. If this shifts how you think about your list, feel free to check out the system or book a call with me. I'll put the links below.